3 sinister true Home Alone horror stories revealed. Terrifying encounters with the haunted unknown. Emily could hardly believe her luck. Home alone for a whole weekend. No parents. No rules. The moment her mom and dad drove off, she raced to the living room, grabbed her favorite blanket, and snuggled up with a huge bowl of popcorn. Horror movies flickered on the screen, the kind that made her heart pound with excitement. She was in control. This was her time. But as the sun sank into the horizon, a chill snaked up her spine. The light dimmed. Shadows stretched ominously across the walls, whispering secrets from dark corners. The wind howled outside, branches scraping against the window like skeletal fingers. Then her phone buzzed. Once, twice. A string of unknown numbers lit up the screen, each message a creeping dread that twisted in her stomach. She swallowed hard, shaking herself, telling her heart to relax. It was just her imagination, right? But as the popcorn lost its warm buttery comfort, she felt compelled to explore. She wandered quietly through the hall, footsteps echoing like whispers from the past. Then she stumbled upon the attic door. It creaked open as if inviting her in. Dust particles danced in the air as she ascended. The dim light barely revealed an old, cobweb-covered box. She opened it hesitantly, intrigued and frightened. Inside lay 3 chilling stories, remnants of the past. The first tale chilled her to the bone, describing the woman next door, always watching from the fence, her eyes too knowing. Emily recalled their last encounter, how the woman had lingered, a smirk hovering on her lips. Did she really see more than she let on? The second story unraveled the neighborhood watch officer, a mockingly cheerful man who was obsessed with control. Her stomach twisted at the thought of their recent conversation. Was that really just a friendly chat? Then came the final tale, a nightmarish account of a family that vanished without a trace 3 years ago. Her pulse raced. The neighborhoods felt eerily silent, as if the trees held their breath, and shadows lingered just outside sight. Icy dread flooded through her, an unsettling connection to her own life. Did her neighbors share a dark history? Just then, the lights flickered and went out. Darkness enveloped her. She felt the haunting tales swirl in her mind like grotesque apparitions, suffocating her. Alone, truly alone. The shadowy corners of her home now seemed alive, breathing, pulsating. She grabbed her phone, desperate for light and reassurance, but all it offered was a lifeless screen. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Suddenly, a scratching sound pierced the suffocating silence, echoing through the vast emptiness of the house. It came from the door, persistent and eerie. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Who or what stood waiting just beyond the threshold? All the safety she once felt was crushed under the weight of fear. The haunted stories clawed at her memory like the thing lurking outside. She stood frozen, caught between the darkness of her home and the sinister truth lurking just out of sight. The shadows closed in, and as panic threatened to engulf her, she realized trust was a fragile illusion, and sometimes the monsters were the friendly faces she had always known. The scratching grew louder, sharper, like nails on a chalkboard. Emily's heart raced, pounding in her chest as though trying to escape. She had read about it, terrible things, hidden in the dark, but nothing could prepare her for the feeling creeping over her now. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like a prey waiting for a predator to strike. Breathless, she took a small step back, contemplating whether to run or confront whatever was tormenting her. Another scratch, this time followed by a low, almost thoughtful hum. It sent pulses of fear coursing through her veins. What was on the other side of that door? Her mind raced through every horror movie cliché, every lesson she had learned about staying safe at home. The fear gnawed at her sanity. She had to know. Hello? She called out, her voice shaky, barely a whisper. Silence answered her, heavy and suffocating. Then the scratching resumed, this time accompanied by a strange thumping sound. It felt like something was tapping in rhythm, responding to her fear. "Stop it," she shouted, her instincts kicking in. The bravado surprised her. Fear often left people paralyzed, but now it ignited a desperate blaze within her. She shuffled sideways, moving away from the door and toward the nearest window, where the fabric of the night was almost tangible as she peered outside. She saw nothing but darkness. The moon hung high, casting ghostly light, highlighting the gravel driveway, empty and desolate. A gust of wind rattled the branches, but there was no sign of life. Just as she felt a wave of relief wash over her, more scratching erupted, harsher this time, followed by a breathy chuckle that sent shivers up her spine. That chuckle, it was too recognizable. It reminded her of the neighborhood watch officer, the kind of man who always smiled too wide, with eyes that searched too deeply. What if it was him, lurking outside? What if he'd been watching her all along? The thought set in a new wave of panic, her heartbeat escalating again. Taking a deep breath, Emily did the only thing she could think of. She bolted back to the attic door. The latch was old and creaky, and she fumbled with it, longing for the safety of an enclosed space. She could hide there, shielded by the very stories that were consuming her. Just as her hands found the cool metal, the door trembled violently, as if something beyond it was trying to force its way in. Emily jumped back, her mind racing. "Just go away," she yelled again, but the words felt weak against the growing chaos. The thumping resumed, louder and more insistent, harmonizing with her rapid breaths. Her eyes darted around the attic, searching for a weapon, a means to defend herself. The fear clawed at her gut as she spotted an old baseball bat propped up against the wall. She grabbed it tightly, feeling its weight grounding her in the turmoil. Emboldened, she stepped closer to the door, her heart pounding like a war drum. "What do you want?" The answer echoed back, a whisper so soft, it pierced her to the core. "You belong to us." With that, the world around her pulsed with terror. The darkness flooded the edges of her vision, smothering her thoughts. Was she truly alone? She was about to find out. And then, silence fell, a crushing, eerie stillness. Emily stood, trembling, expecting the door to crash open any second. Time stretched, constricting her mind and her air. Something sinister lurked just beyond the unknown, and in that moment, she had to decide. Would she face whatever awaited her or remain trapped in this horror? But there was one thing she knew for certain. The clock was ticking, and with it, her courage dwindled. Would she still be alive to see dawn? Emily's breath hitched as the silence stretched, forming a thick tether around her thoughts. She tightened her grip on the baseball bat, feeling its rough texture against her sweaty palms. Each second felt like an eternity, waiting for the door to yield to whatever was trapped beyond it. She stepped away from the door, heart racing, and forced her gaze to the shadows pooling in every corner of the attic. The quiet was deceptive, and she could almost hear the sound of her heart drumming in protest. What if it was something that fed off her fear? With a sudden burst of panic, she rushed to the little window facing the driveway, the glass cloaked in grime. She pried it open, the creaking sound piercing through the stillness like an alarm. Outside, the moon hung heavy, illuminating an expanse of shadows and trees that seemed to shiver in the wind. When she saw him, a figure standing at the mouth of the driveway, backlit by the moon. The neighborhood watch officer. His grin was wide and eerie, reflecting the moonlight in a way that made the hairs on her neck bristle. Was he smiling at her? Or was it something more sinister? "Help! Someone's in here!" she shouted, hoping to pierce the fear that held her captive. She felt ridiculous, screaming for help when she knew there was little chance of salvation in this forsaken house. The figure didn't move, just stood there, an ominous silhouette. Her stomach twisted violently. The door rattled again, this time with a thundering force. Emily turned toward it, instinctively raising the bat, ready to strike. Memories flickered in her mind, tales of things that waited just behind old doors, waiting to consume their prey. A new whisper danced around her, slithering into her ears with a chilling promise. You can't run, you can't hide, you are ours. And then a low growl emerged, a sound so unnatural it froze her blood. Stop, she yelled, the word tearing from her throat. But it only seemed to provoke whatever was behind the door. It quaked under another forceful pound, the wood splintering just before Emily could back away. In a moment of sheer instinct, she ran for the attic stairs. She couldn't stay here. She had to find a way out. She stumbled, falling to the ground as the stairs creaked ominously beneath her. With the strength born of desperation, she pushed herself up and bolted towards the far side of the attic. Suddenly, the door burst open, crashing against the wall with a bone-jarring thud. Dark silhouettes crept into the light, their forms twisting grotesquely. Emily could barely comprehend their features as panic flooded her mind like poison. But there was no time for hesitation. The hairs on her arms stood tall, and she flew towards the window again, determination surging beneath the weight of dread. Help, please, she cried again, this time for anyone, anything that might hear her. But as she climbed towards freedom, she felt fingers brush against her ankle. Cold, clammy fingers pulling her back, dragging her into the abyss, threatening to swallow her whole. She slammed down, heels scraping against the wooden floor, fighting against whatever was holding her tight. The echoes of her struggles resonated in the attic like a desperate symphony, but the darkness pressed in closer. She could hear the soft chuckling again, taunting her with its familiarity. Just as she finally broke free, she found her way back to the moonlit glow, a light that felt so far away. And then it flickered. Emily froze. A soft gasp escaped her lips. The power was failing. The figure at the driveway took a step forward, a distorted grin stretching even wider, teeth glinting like daggers. And with that realization, a chill wrapped around her heart, whispering of an end that crept closer with each fading heartbeat. What was lurking in the shadows, ready to claim her as its own? Emily had only moments left to fight for her life. Would she find her way to safety, or was she already too late? Emily mustered every ounce of strength and lunged toward the window. The chilling grip around her ankle vanished, but anxiety knotted her stomach. The shadows seemed to pulse, alive with sinister intent. She climbed onto the sill, her heart racing as the phantom echoes of her struggle tormented her. The grinning figure at the end of the driveway was still there, growing closer, brushing aside the shadows as if they were mere fabric. The moonlight flickered again, sending her pulse into a frenzied beat. "No, no, no!" she whispered, the words clawing their way out of her throat. She couldn't let them win. She couldn't let them take her. Outside stretched a darkness so profound it felt suffocating. No matter her mounting dread, the ground beckoned with a promise of fleeting freedom. Emily propelled herself out the window, landing with a thud on the damp grass below. Pain shot through her legs, but she rolled and quickly scrambled to her feet. Adrenaline overriding the agony, she plunged into the dense thicket of trees bordering the backyard. She turned back just in time to see the figure standing at the window she had just escaped. Those wide, wicked teeth gleamed under the moonlight, twisted and unnatural. A whisper shivered through the branches. "You can't escape." Breathless, Emily dashed into the woods, her footsteps muffled by the fallen leaves. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, each breath harder as panic clawed at her chest. She could hear them moving, the silhouettes weaving through the trees, their laughter echoing in the night. Each note sharp, as if mocking her feeble attempt at survival. Somewhere in the distance, she spotted a faint light flicker through the openings in the trees. Desperation surged through her. It could be hope, a sign of safety, but instinct screamed to push deeper into the shadows. What if it was a lure, a trap waiting to snap shut? Against her better judgment, she veered towards the light, heart drumming violently against her ribs. The laughter pulsated around her, a chorus that seemed to amplify with each step. She stumbled, arms windmilling as she fought to regain balance. Fear coiled tight, a noose ready to pull her under. "Run, Emily," she urged herself. Then she saw it, a rickety old shed. The light flickered, a lone bulb hanging from the ceiling, illuminating dust motes swirling like spirits. Should she hide? What if whatever was hunting her was already inside? Without another thought, she lunged for the door, slamming it shut behind her. The echo of the latch clicking into place felt both reassuring and hollow. Her breathing came in harsh gasps as she pressed her back against the wall, hands clammy and slick against the wood. Silence engulfed her, thickening the air until she could almost taste it. She risked a glance through the narrow slats in the door. Shadows flitted in the distance, searching, stalking. The figures were instinctual, swaying gently like weeds in a breeze, always gliding closer, always sniffing the air for the scent of fear. But then something else caught her eye: movement near the far wall of the shed. It took a moment to register. A figure was hunched there, shrouded in darkness. Emily squinted, heart stuttering. Was it one of them? She struggled against the dread swelling in her chest. Squeezed by panic but driven by curiosity, she strained to see the features hidden in the shadows. Did it move? With bated breath and a sudden surge of courage, she whispered, "Hello?" But as the echo of her voice faded, the darkness erupted, and the figure turned, revealing an expression of raw malevolence mixed with an unsettling familiarity. "Emily, you shouldn't have run." The moonlight flickered one last time. What did it mean? And would she ever truly escape the grip of the darkness that hungered for her? The figure in the shed shifted, the shadows swirling around it like smoke. Emily's heart thundered in her chest, a wild percussion against the palpable silence. She struggled to catch a breath, the air thickening with dread. For a moment, she thought of bolting back into the dark, but the weight of familiarity pinned her in place. Who are you?" she managed, voice trembling. As if responding to her fear, the figure stepped into a slant of light, hauntingly familiar yet grotesque. It was her brother, Jason. But the boy she once knew was gone, replaced by something sinister. A wicked smile stretched across his face, eyes glinting with malice. "Did you really think you could escape?" he hissed, a cruel mockery curling his lips. "I've been waiting for you. We were always meant to be together." His laughter, once innocent, now was a horrific echo that bounced off the walls. "Jason, stop it!" Panic gripped Emily as she pressed her back harder against the wood. "This isn't you. Where are Mom and Dad?" "In here, Emily," he said, a twisted grin forming. He gestured with an unnatural hand toward the shadows behind him. "They were never safe. You had to see." Emily's stomach curled. Her mind raced through the memories: her parents' laughter, their love. Jason had been her protector, and now he was part of whatever this was. The laughter outside rose again, sinister and consuming, drowning out her thoughts. "You can join us, he purred, advancing slowly. "We'll always be together like we were meant to." She shook her head, taking a step back. "Get away from me." But the shed felt smaller, suffocating. She was surrounded by walls that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. The shadows began to stretch, groping for Emily like greedy hands. Frantic, she searched for an escape. The door, it had to be her way out. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, she shoved herself away from the wall, sprinting towards the door. Jason lunged, his fingers grasping at her shirt, but she slipped past him, locking her fingers around the cold handle. She yanked it open, pain lancing through her chest as she collided with the frame. Fresh night air flooded her senses, momentarily clearing the haze of terror. She stumbled outside, tripping on the uneven ground, barely maintaining her balance. Behind her, she heard Jason's laughter, a sound that echoed like shards of glass scraping against flesh. The darkness was waiting, shadows twisting into grotesque shapes as she darted back into the woods, branches snagging at her clothes. The silhouettes still lurked near the shed, their forms shifting whenever she glanced back, as if gathering strength. "Run, just run," she screamed at herself, the panic spiraling into overdrive. But the chill crawled up her spine, that familiar whisper lingering in the air. "You'll never escape." Suddenly, she stopped, her breath hitching as an overwhelming fear settled in. What if she wasn't meant to escape? What if this was all part of the dark design? Emily squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to wake from a nightmare that felt too real. Lost among the trees, she couldn't tell where she was going. Each direction was swallowed by shadows, closing in like hungry wolves. Just when she seemed to lose all hope, she stumbled upon a small clearing bathed in a ghostly glow. At its center stood an old tree, twisted and gnarly, roots writhing like serpents. Somehow, the sight felt like a drawing, an invitation, a warning, or both. What did it want from her? But before she could contemplate further, she heard footsteps behind. Laughter rang out, buoyed by the wind. Heart racing, Emily turned, body taut with imminent dread as the shadows surged forward, figures breaking free from the darkness. They were coming for her. Emily! A chorus of voices called out, some familiar, some foreign, blending into a horrifying cacophony. As they surrounded her, the light from the clearing flickered in tandem with her heartbeats. She had to decide: join the familiar or fight the dark run. She shouted again, needing to escape the hands reaching for her, the voices, begging her to come home. But home had betrayed her. What awaited her at the center of the clearing? With her heart hammering, she took a step back, teetering on the line between safety and despair. The darkness swirled around her like a living thing. Would she have the strength to confront her own nightmares? Or would she lose herself in the shadows forever? Emily's breath came in ragged gasps as the laughter swelled. It wrapped around her like a noose, squeezing tightly. She spun, casting desperate glances at the figures closing in. They stood at the edges of the clearing, their outlines twisted and shifting, features obscured by shadows that danced in the moonlight. Emily! Their voices melded into a haunting melody. Come back to us. Each time they called her name, it felt like a needle piercing through her heart. Faces emerged in glimpses: her parents, friends, and strangers morphing and melding into a terrifying tapestry. They beckoned her, arms outstretched, desperate yet sinister. She shook her head violently, trying to deny the pull of their call. No, you're not them. But the shadows around her thickened, clinging to her like oil, suffocating her resolve. The tree loomed behind her, its branches brittle and gnarled, resembling grasping hands. Could it protect her, or was it part of the horror? The figures advanced, their laughter merging into a cacophony that made her skin crawl. Instinct kicked in. She had to break free. With a sudden burst of courage, she lunged for the old tree. Its roots twisted around her ankle as she tried to push away, sharp pain biting into her flesh. Stay with us, Emily. Jason's voice cut through the chaos, eerie and inviting. This is where you belong. But as he spoke, she caught a glimpse of the thing beneath the surface. The grotesque smile that had once comforted her now twisted into something far more sinister. It churned her stomach. No, she screamed, wrenching her foot free and darting past the tree. But the shadows shifted, and she felt hands grabbing at her, clutching, pulling her back into the darkness. Heart racing, she swung around, searching for any possible exit. The clearing had become a trap, a circus of madness, and there was no escape. Don't you want to see them again? Don't you want to be with us? They lured, their voices now soft and enticing, seeping into her mind like poison. Emily stumbled backward, moving instinctively. A distant sound echoed, a ringing that seemed to grow closer. The woods whispered around her, a breath, a sigh, the rustling of leaves. It felt alive, aware of her plight, and suddenly, in that moment of dread, she noticed it. A faint glow pulsing from within the tree, as if it held a heart. The shadows twitched as if the light annoyed them, flickering with mounting anger. Emily, they whispered, edging closer. Don't leave us, we're your family. The pulse of light brightened, casting away the darkness for an instant. With a surge of hope, she lunged toward it, ready to grasp whatever light might offer. But the figures surged forward, their true forms emerging twisted, corrupted versions of the loved ones she knew. Their faces were a macabre canvas, with hollow eyes and gaping mouths, reaching for her with clawed fingers. Join us, they hissed, their voices piercing her resolve. Emily hesitated just long enough for the darkness to consume the light as flicker, engulfing her once more. Panic gripped her chest as the shadows closed in on a moment of reckless desperation. She shouted the only thing that came to mind. I refuse to belong to this nightmare. A howl echoed through the clearing. A scream of rage that shook the air. The shadows recoiled as if struck, and Emily seized the moment. She dove past the unwieldy mass, charging toward the edge of the clearing. But the ground trembled beneath her. Something ancient was awakening. The old tree's bark crackled, and as she glanced back, horrified, the roots began to unfurl. They twisted and clawed at the ground, reaching hungrily for her, pulling her towards the heart of darkness. The laughter grew louder, morphing into a deafening roar. Remember, you need us stumbling back. Emily felt a pull in the pit of her stomach. The faces of her family, cornered by shadows, flashed before her. She hesitated, a decision weighing heavily amid the chaos around her. Could she break the connection forever? Or would she find herself trapped within those twisted ties? With lightning speed, she turned again. The path away from the tree and the nightmare it contained. What lay beyond? Was there salvation in the darkness? Or was it only a different kind of trap? Her heart raced. One choice lay before her, and the echo of laughter chased her through the gathering gloom. Could she outrun the past? Or were the shadows destined to catch her? Emily dashed through the dense woods, every branch clawing at her skin, as if they wanted to drag her back to the nightmare. The laughter echoed behind her, a chilling symphony that blended with the rustling leaves and the howling wind. She pushed through the thickets, desperation fueling her surge forward. The twisted figures abandoned their talk of family and their beckoning hands to form a monstrous chorus, urging her to return. Emily, the voice was sweet, tantalizing, as if enchanting her to submit. We will never let you go. The trees thinned, the laughter swallowed by the distance. She felt momentarily free, the forest shedding its hold. But she knew it was an illusion. The malevolence lurked just beyond her sight. Her heart thudded in her chest, and sweat dripped down her brow. She had to move faster. The promise of light ahead hinted at an escape, but Emily had learned that light could betray. Would it lead her to safety, or merely fool her like the glowing heart of that cursed tree? The ground dipped, and suddenly she was tumbling. The world spun as she fell, landing hard on a moist mound of earth. She gasped, glancing around. This place felt different, strange. Muffled whispers danced around her, low and urgent. The shadows were closer now, pooling along the ground like fog. Scrambling to her feet, Emily spotted a small, abandoned cabin nestled in the thicket. Its roof sagged under the weight of time and neglect, a morbid structure that somehow felt familiar. Mesmerized, she staggered toward it, drawn by some unseen force. The door creaked open at her touch. Inside, dust motes floated in the weak light filtered through cracked windows. Furniture was draped in white sheets, like forgotten ghosts. She felt an odd sense of déjà vu wash over her. Fragments of memories began to surface. Memories of happier days spent here, her childhood. Laughter, playing hide and seek. But that warmth was suffocated by the encroaching shadows. Come on, Emma voice whispered, coaxing her into the depths of the cabin. It sounded like her mother, but there was an edge like the blade of a knife hidden in a hug. Are you there? Emily called, the words falling into silence like pebbles into a well. No response came, only the whispering wind and the ever-looming threat lurking just outside the doorframe. As the shadows curled around the walls, something shifted under the sheets. It moved with her, a presence that watched as she stepped deeper into the cabin, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. With a shaky breath, she pulled a sheet away. The figure beneath was her reflection, a mirrored image of herself. Pale eyes widening with terror. But it wasn't just her. It wore a twisted smirk, a mocking grin that revealed jagged teeth. Her heart threatened to leap clear out of her throat. Join us, it hissed in unison with the voices outside. Emily stumbled back, horrified, but the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening thud. No, she cried out, banging her fists against the wood. Let me out. Panic clawed at her throat. But then she remembered. The glow, the pulse of light from the tree. That was her lifeline. If she could harness that energy, maybe, just maybe, she would escape this nightmarish cycle. With urgency, she turned, eyes scanning for a way through this cursed place as she rushed toward a window. The voices shifted to a menacing chant, drowning out her thoughts. Emily, Emily. We are still here. They became a chaotic rhythm, a dire reminder that the past would not let her go. With a reckless leap, she lunged toward the window, but the glass shattered, echoing through the silence. As she clambered out, she felt the shadows slithering behind her, clawing at her heels. Would she find the strength she needed in the dark corners of her memory? Her escape was not just from this cabin but from the fate that awaited her if she lingered too long. What awaited her beyond the woods, a way back to safety or the waiting arms of her twisted kin? Emily gasped into the night air, determination igniting inside her. But as she plunged deeper into the forest, she sensed something lurking just at the edge of focus. Could she outrun the past, or would she finally face her own nightmares head-on? As Emily sprinted through the underbrush, adrenaline surged like wildfire coursing through her veins. The moon hung low and heavy, casting eerie shadows that reached for her, as if trying to pull her back into the suffocating darkness. Each step echoed her heartbeat, a thunderous reminder of how close the lurking horrors were, so close she could almost feel their icy breath grazing her neck. The forest was alive with whispers, the sounds merging together in a sinister symphony. Emily, they beckoned in sickly sweet tones, yearning to draw her closer, to consume her abandon. It was a melody of betrayal, a taunt that hung in the air, seemingly woven into the very fabric of the night. With every stride, the unease settled deeper in her stomach, clenching tighter with a sense of impending doom. She stumbled over roots and rocks, the terrain unforgiving, but even that pale in comparison to the terror racing behind her. She glanced over her shoulder, heart sputtering like an old engine. Shadows danced, elongated and distorted, drifting just out of reach but always right behind her. Suddenly, she burst into a clearing and skidded to a halt. A remnant of her childhood, a rusted swing set, stood eerily still, anchored in the earth like a forgotten relic. Memories flickered through her mind, memories of sunny days and laughter, now twisted, tainted with something dark. Just like home, she thought with a bitter irony. The laughter rang in her ears again, echoing through the trees, almost mocking her. Emily shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. This wasn't a place of refuge. It felt like a trap laid out specifically for her. Get out! She screamed at the night, punctuating her words with frantic breaths, terrified she would be swallowed by the shadows. You can't have me! The wind hissed in response, rustling the leaves. It felt like 1,000 invisible eyes were drilling into her back, waiting for her to collapse from sheer exhaustion. She turned away from the swings, moving deeper into the clearing, searching for anything that resembled safety. Then she saw it, a patch of stone, smooth and oddly out of place among the jagged terrain. Drawn to it, she approached cautiously, the air thick with an electric pulse, a tug that pulled at her very core. With trembling hands, she brushed away the dirt. What she uncovered sent a shiver racing through her mind. It was an old, ornate pendant half buried in the mud, glimmering faintly beneath the accumulated grime. The cold metal felt heavy in her palm, the weight of countless stories imbued in it. As she clenched the pendant, the air around her shifted. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony, each voice distinct, each syllable dripping with venom. You'll never break free, they chanted, spinning around her like a whirlwind of despair. Panic surged, and Emily dropped the pendant as though it burned. But it was too late. The shadows seized that moment to close in, engulfing her in a silhouette of despair, freezing her in place. From the depths of the darkness, laughter erupted, chilling her to the bone. She scrambled backwards, but the ground felt like quicksand. Every movement met with resistance as the darkness threatened to swallow her whole. Emily, a new voice floated through, rich and deep, and in that moment, she recognized it. It belonged to the figure from the cabin, the twisted reflection. The realization crashed over her, a connection formed between them, straddling the line of life and death, her essence tethered to this creature of wrath, with desperation clawing up her throat. She turned and fled, forcing herself past the parasitic shadows that writhed and lunged. The way ahead twisted into a dense thicket of trees, gnarly branches looking like skeletal hands reaching for their prey. Was escape possible? But she wouldn't reflect on that, not now. The laughter chased her, the taunts echoing in her mind as she plunged into the thick darkness, willing herself to push through. Then, just ahead, she glimpsed at a flickering light, more solid this time. Hope surged through her, but doubt pursued. Was it light, or another wicked trick? She staggered towards it, fear collaring her instincts. The laughter diminished, replaced by a suffocating silence that felt even more ominous. What lay beyond that shining beacon? Would it lead her home, or seal her fate? With her heart racing, Emily stepped forward, praying she'd find the truth waiting for her, but as she crossed through the threshold, the ground trembled beneath her, shifting into uncertainty. What awaited her beyond that light? Could it finally set her free, or drag her deeper into the nightmare? Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she crossed into the light. The brightness enveloped her, blinding for just a moment before revealing what lay beyond. She stood in a dilapidated room, its air stale and thick with the scent of mold and decay. Mismatched furniture was strewn about haphazardly, as if a furious storm had swept through and flung everything into disarray. The walls were adorned with faded photographs, black and white portraits of men and women whose hollow eyes seemed to follow her. Those faces, weathered by time, whispered her name, urging her deeper into the shadows that should have faded into the corners of the room. A chill skated down her spine. Is this how it ends? She thought, her mind racing as panic resurged. Welcome home, Emily. The voice came low, reverberating through the cramped space as shadows pulsed against the walls, twisting and writhing like snakes thirsty for a kill. Panic surged again, and she stumbled toward what could only be a door at the far side of the room. She felt drawn to it, another beacon in her suffocating reality. But it wouldn't budge, a sturdy barrier to escape. Just behind her, the shadowy figure materialized, dark and ominous. You thought you could run? It hissed, its voice slithering around her like a serpent. You are never free of me. Desperate, Emily turned and scanned the room for an exit. The old chandelier above her flickered uncertainly, pitching the room into a chaotic dance of light and darkness. Flickering images of past horrors flashed before her, shadows mimicking every event, every fear she'd ever faced in her life. How could it know her so well? Leave me alone, she screamed, clenching her fists, willing herself to summon any courage left inside her. The shadows seemed to relish her cries, swirling closer, enveloping her in a suffocating darkness that blended with her panic. Was there truly no escape? She stumbled back, eyes wild, searching for anything to protect herself. Her fingertips grazed the edge of something solid, a dusty old bookshelf filled with volumes and tomes draped in cobwebs. She yanked a book from the shelf, the leather cover cracked and time-worn. As she flipped it open, a surge of energy coursed through her, almost inviting her into its depths. The pages shimmered, filled with arcane symbols and strange illustrations of symbols she couldn't comprehend. What are you? She whispered. The shadows paused, the figure behind her silent, watching with an unwavering intensity. Emily felt the weight of those unseen eyes pressing down harder, a desire to consume her. You can't hide in there forever, it crooned, voice like gravel, echoing through the room. You belong to me. Accept your fate. She slammed the book shut, determination surging like an unexpected current. No, I won't be trapped. I choose to fight. In an act of sheer desperation, she hurled the book at the shadowy figure. As it sailed through the air, time seemed to stretch, the world held its breath. But the moment the book made contact, an explosion of light erupted. The shadows recoiled, retreating like a wounded beast. Emily seized the opportunity. She lunged toward the door, and this time, it swung open, revealing a blinding light that promised freedom. Then came the sound, a mournful wail that sent shivers down her spine. It was the laughter, That damned laughter again, echoing from the darkness, mixed with pleading cries. No! Emily stumbled back, torn between the beckoning light and the sinister horrors behind her. This was her chance, but what about the lives? The faces hidden in the shadows? Choose, the voice slithered, coiling around her thoughts. Will you abandon your past, or will it forever be your chain? Heart racing, she glanced back one last time, torn by the choices that hung before her like guillotine blades. Which path would unlock the chains of her torment? As she stood at the precipice of the unknown, Emily felt herself teetering between freedom and a past that wouldn't let go. Was she truly ready to abandon everything, or would she give in to the darkness? In that moment, the sinister laughter enveloped her once more, pulling her towards a decision she could not ignore. The light flickered, and she sensed the truth closing in. Could she escape this twisted fate, or would the shadows finally claim what they were after? Emily stood on the threshold, teetering between the terrifying darkness behind her and the blinding light ahead. Sweat trickled down her back as her heart hammered in her chest. The laughter echoed around her, wrapping her in a chilling embrace, taunting her with memories lost to the shadows. A cacophony of voices clawed at her mind, memories of her family, of moments filled with laughter, twisting into agonizing pleas. Choose, the voice crooned, silky and sinister. Will you abandon your past? Every instinct in her screamed to flee into the light, to escape the clutches of the darkness that had haunted her for so long. But would stepping into the light mean leaving behind her family, however twisted they had become? Would it mean severing the ties that bound her to a past, the bonds of love wrapped in betrayal? She swallowed hard, desperation surging within her as she felt the shadows closing in again. The familiar faces twisted and distorted, pleading and snarling in equal measure. You need to choose, Emily. The darkness pressed close, a living thing. You can't escape your fate. With all her strength, she forced her voice to rise above the chaos. I refuse to be a prisoner of my past. The moment those words left her lips, the shadows recoiled, as if burned by her defiance. The laughter turned to a shriek, echoing in a haunting sorrow that rattled the walls around her. The light pulsed, almost breathing, inviting her forward. Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself against the pull of the darkness. She could feel the weight of her family pressing upon her heart, could sense their desperate longing to pull her back into the abyss. But she was not ready to be consumed. Taking a bold step forward, she plunged into the shimmering light. The warmth enveloped her, washing over her like a wave, dissolving the shadows into tendrils of smoke that evaporated at her mere touch. Everything felt alive. She could almost hear the whispers fade, replaced by a calm, soothing silence. Emily, the voice, had changed into something more tender. She opened her eyes, surprised to find herself standing in a sunlit glade, vibrant colors exploding in cheer. Flowers bloomed, birds sang, and the scent of fresh earth filled the air. Was this freedom? Was this what it meant to emerge from the darkness? But then she turned, her heart pounding again. The glade wasn't just a paradise. It was a place of memories, real memories. She saw her parents standing under a great oak tree, smiling at her like the world hadn't crumbled. Jason stood beside them, innocent, the mischief dancing in his eyes. Welcome home, Emily, her mother cooed, wrapping her arms around her. An overwhelming wave of warmth enveloped her, dissolving her worries momentarily, but the memory of the shadows lingered. No, you're not them. Emily staggered back. The joy melted away, revealing the shadows lurking behind their grins, twisting their features back to the grotesque forms she had seen before. The glade changed, darkening once more as their eyes turned hollow. You cannot escape us, Emily. You belong to us. Terror surged within her, and she realized the truth. Home had never been a place. It had been a feeling, one that the darkness had twisted. The faces of her family faded and morphed back into the shadows, dissipating into memories trapped in the nightmare. No more, she cried, shaking her head fiercely. I choose my own path. In that moment, a brilliant flash erupted around her, and the oppressive weight lifted as the veil of shadows was torn away. She was no longer haunted by the faces of lost love but filled with the strength of her own resolve. Emily stood strong and unyielding, anchored by her decision to embrace freedom and forge her own identity outside the bonds of darkness. Ahead stretched a new landscape, hopeful and bright, a path marked by the strength of all she had faced. One foot in front of the other, she ventured toward that vivid horizon, each step reinvigorating her soul. The shadows faded into echoes of her past, powerless against the light growing within her. Emily embraced the warmth surrounding her, knowing she was free at last. Sometimes home wasn't a place. It was a feeling, a right to define oneself beyond the darkness. As dawn broke in radiant glory, she finally breathed easy, feeling truly alive for the first time. No longer would the shadows dictate who she was. She understood now. She was the author of her story. And as the first rays of sunlight kissed her skin, she smiled, an echo of laughter adorning her lips, no longer a prison, but a promise of brighter days ahead. Before we wrap up this chilling adventure, I need you to listen closely. This is your chance to be part of our growing community. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that will grip your heart. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and support the channel. Flood the comments section below with your thoughts and theories about Emily's journey. And for your real friends who need a taste of this spine-chilling adventure, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. Your participation is what makes this all possible.